Okay, so today's topic is materialism. I think it's a big topic because I do love brands, I do love fancier things, and there is a reason behind that, which I will get into. But when it comes to materialism, we will first dive into what that actually means.
To me, materialism kind of leans on the side of overconsumption. I like the idea of having things for utility, but at the same time, I do like nice things.
What defines materialism is the relationship to materialism. I think it's up to the person how much a person can handle before the materialism takes over.
If somebody asks me what materialism is, it's simply being attached to materials and the physical goods that we have around us, then the spiritual side of things.
So materialism is also very important for a man, because one thing is like it shows in modern age how good a provider he is.
So it's more than just me spending a couple $100,000 to get a sports car or whatever. But behind the scenes, it's like, oh, this may get me access to a network where I can close millions in deals, So then it becomes somewhat of an investment. So there's two sides to it, right?
If I'm owning a limited edition Rolex, the people who can afford it would actually know that it's a limited edition Rolex. Even if we just think 3 years ago, the things that we wanted, we have. And we will always be wanting more, no matter what we have tomorrow. But being grateful for what you have, where you are today, I think that is just a game changer.
Welcome to another episode of Men Forward. Today, we are going to be talking about materialism and its relationship to men in the modern age. With me, I have Neil and I have Rafe. I finally got the names right. And we're going to jump straight into it. Rafe is going to be leading the podcast, and welcome to you.
All right. I did not know I will be leading the podcast since he started, but whatever Ali says happens. So we will make that happen for sure. Okay. So today's topic is materialism in context with men and how they deal with it. And of course, especially for me, I think it's a big topic because I do love brands. I do love, fancier things. And there is a reason behind that, which I will get into. But when it comes to materialism, we will first dive into what that actually means. Let's hear from Neil what it means for him, and then let's go to Ali and what it means for him, and then I'll chime in as well.
Yeah.
Over to you.
So, I mean, to me, materialism kind of leans on the side of overconsumption. I like the idea of having things for utility, but at the same time, I do like nice things. Uh, and especially as I get older, like I can afford it, this kind of stuff. I would go for it. But then at the same time, lifestyle factors and stuff has a lot to do with it. Like, as in, I literally, travel with everything that I own in two suitcases. So I have a cap on that. But I remember this one instance. This is when I was in Malaysia. Ali saw how many shoes I had, and then he was like, "I thought you were minimalist," And then he was like looking at like 6 pairs of shoe because I had a shoe for running, one for competing, a rock climbing shoe, a dress shoe, a shoe for everyday casual wear. So, but to me, all of those shoes had purpose, like I used it for different utility. So there's those instances. But yeah, now it's like I want the finer things, obviously, but I tend to not escalate to the point of like, oh, I need I don't know, D&G or Louis Vuitton, all this kind of stuff. That doesn't interest me, But I still want something that feels good on me if it's clothes. Let's say, for example, um, uh, and looks good, and is really good quality, and I would spend money for that because it just makes me look good, it makes me feel good, and I'm happy to not have to buy the same thing every 2 months because the quality is shit, right? Um, but that is like something material, right? Like something that I would feel and all of this. And me, I tend to spend more on the experiential side of life, traveling and all of this kind of stuff. As you know, I'm always on the move, but that's where my money goes mostly. Um, and of course, to my family, my day to day living, all of this kind of stuff. But yeah, I think for me personally, like I don't. I try not to overconsume in terms of like the material stuff, and I know what naturally happens. Like now I'm going to be in one place, things start coming and you start accumulating and you're like, oh, this is nice, I need this. And it happens, it's easy to happen. But I think just having the awareness of like, okay, is this really necessary, or is this something that I'm paying so much more just for a name, or along these lines, because of really good marketing and branding and all this. That's why we pay for literally the same thing that is made in Bangladesh in a I don't know, I don't want to say sweatshop, but yeah, in a place with very low wages, making stuff, and then it's branded somewhere in Europe, made in Paris, and then you go pay like 100 times the amount, So to me, it comes down to the awareness. Nothing is wrong, in my opinion, with having uh, a want for the finer things and all of this, but just having the awareness that you don't become someone who is overconsumed by consumption. If that makes sense. That's my take on it. What about you, Ali? Because I know Ali likes the finer things in life.
So I think my point is very much built on what you actually ended up with. For me, when I'm thinking about materialism, I'm thinking about it's very much what defines materialism is the relationship to materialism. And when I'm saying that, it is very much are you owning the materialism or is the materialism that is owning you? And that's very much it. Is it can you again I think it's up to the person how much a person can handle before the materialism takes over, and that's also how I define it. I think previously, but again, materialism is very related to money, and it's also your money mindset and your relationship to money, which we also discussed before on another topic. But in this case, when I was reflecting on it, very much in the Maslow's pyramid of needs, you see materialism is at the bottom and the foundation of all of the other stuff. And also when I'm reflecting on like it's if you think about it, the three layers, it's you have your body, you go one layer deeper, you have your emotions, and then you have the spirit below all of these things. The physical part is very important, and the physical part need materialism, whether it's food, it's goods, and so on. And the need, I don't know, if we think about like as a society and a human evolution, materialism and the need for materialism is also one of the things that really makes human progress, because you need to have things in your life. You will work for it. And that also like, because we need things and we also need more, I'm going to say advanced things, fancy things, that is one of the factors that keep pushing humanity forward and keep us evolving as a species. So is materialism bad? I don't think so. Is it good? Again, is how you label it. But what is more important than materialism, it is your relationship to materialism. That will be my main point into materialism, at least how I see it.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah. And I think it makes sense because, see, like for me, if somebody asks me what materialism is, it's simply, being attached to materials, and the physical goods that we have around us, then the spiritual side of things. That's what materialism is to me, right? Like I'm just so attached to the idea of hoarding stuff and hoarding like expensive stuff that I don't really think about my afterlife or my spirituality or whatever my beliefs are, right? And I am born a Muslim, so I do believe in the concept of afterlife. So in the beginning of the podcast, I said that I like finer things, but that does not mean that I don't like the spiritual side and I don't pursue the spiritual side of things, because I do practice my religion. And I do believe in a spirituality. I do believe that there is a spirit that is in all of us. But when it comes to materialism and when it comes to attachment to things, I'm not really attached to the idea of buying branded stuff. Like buying a Prada bag or a Dior bag, that just like it doesn't make sense to me. Like I don't know why people spend thousands of dollars just to have that possession. And now I see the value in it, because I know that if you spend like $20,000 on a bag, in 3 years it might be 30 grand. So like there is that investment side of things. But essentially for me, I'm not really attached to the idea of buying expensive stuff because they're expensive or they have a bigger name. But one thing that I've realized, especially how I lead my life, is how can I optimize my life in a way that I can do things and enjoy doing those things. Like even the smallest of things, like vacuuming the house. Like I was really making a decision: should I buy a normal vacuum cleaner or I should buy a Dyson?
Get a Dyson,
Dyson
and
is,
you'll vacuum every single day. Trust me.
yes, and I got a fucking Dyson. Like and I like I felt the pain. I was like, shit, it's an expensive vacuum, but it will last long, and the way it makes the chore so interesting, that is an experience. Like owning that shit, like all of us are now in 30s, and that's why we're talking about appliances. But owning that is an experience, like I was considering buying a Ninja, and I bought a Ninja blender, and I was so amazed by it. And then in like 2 months, it went bad, and I'm like, shit. So I
Ooh.
shouldn't actually buy Ninja stuff. I should buy stuff that is originally the OG. And I bought the
Mhm.
Dyson, and I'm like, wow, I'm enjoying it. Like,
Mhm.
so for me, like buying expensive stuff is for quality, is for consumption, is for really that experience, versus, like just because, oh, it's a great name, Dyson, wow, I'm just gonna show it off. No, I don't give a shit, like, and that's what the reality is. So for me, my grandfather used to say that the person who buys expensive stuff cries once, but the person who buys cheap stuff cries again and again and again, because he will just, keep buying the same shit again and again
Exactly.
just because it's fucking cheap. So that's my 2 cents, Ali.
And I love that point. And again, I can understand the let's speak about Hoovers and vacuum cleaners for a second. Dude, the second I purchased the high-end robot cleaner, the Roborock, I swear to God, every single time it starts to just mop my floor and vacuum cleaners, I'm like, wow, what magic that is. Did I pay a shitload of money and a kidney and almost a BMW? Yes. Was it worth it? I swear to God, bro, it's better. But speaking about it, so I think there are a point to make in here. When you get older and wiser, you start to understand the value of quality. But as you say, how do I distinguish between quality and branding? Because something, and a lot of times you might actually seem, oh, this is a very good quality, or this is a very high-end brand, but it might actually not be quality. It's actually a brand. It's a nice it's a nice face of the brand, and maybe not really providing the necessary need that you actually have. So I think that's a very, very important point on that one. But one thing that comes into my mind is also, now speaking about men and the material possessions. It's very, again, we know it, culture wise, a man is also ranked socially based on the material possessions. A lot of people wouldn't be driving Mercedes, they will actually go for Skoda if it wasn't because of the prestigious image they are giving and providing. So I would love to hear your points on that one, because that is a dilemma sometimes. One thing is that I know for myself, on one side, I'm like, I actually don't really care about it. Honestly, I could drive a Skoda and I could drive a Mercedes, and I think both of them will give the same joy. However, you're really also paying maybe that 100K extra in Denmark. Let's say, for example, that maybe that 20K extra USD because of that brand. Because when you drive it, but again, it also gives you another feeling, but it's not the feeling of the car, it's the feeling of how people are perceiving you. So materialism is also very important for a man, because one thing is like it shows in modern age how good a provider he is. And I would love to hear your perspective on, because that is one thing that is actually very real. You had your podcast that's called The Integrated Man. And for me also, like the integrated man, or for example, the authentic man, I don't give a fuck about society, but we are living in a society where we are judged all the time. And
Mhm.
first impression, for example, again, if you come in rolling a Rolex and a suit, you can be the nicest person, but if you are coming in with a normal shirt and your jeans, you might be the smartest person on earth. It wouldn't give that impression, and you would need to build that impression. And materialism or material stuff is giving a signal before you even open your mouth. And in that case, it actually becomes something that's very important. So I know it's a couple of points, but what is your take on it, Neil? And then we can jump into roughing.
Yeah.
Neil.
So there's this concept. I don't know who created it, but it's like the man who owns, the whatever Ferrari or something. Like he thinks that he gets the status and stuff, but he does. But what people think is not I want to be that guy, but I want that car. So that's what actually happens. But um, we touched on a lot of things that were like necessity based, or utility based, like almost the blender, the vacuum, all these things are things we use. But now let's go into the more frivolous stuff. So the watches, the cars, this kind of stuff. As Ali said, these things play an important role in like the hierarchical structure of men, and that is important. So if you want to own, like, let's say a Ferrari or something, that is completely fine, right? To me, I want to own a Porsche, but where I live right now, I can't. Like, I don't even own a car. I rent a scooter, bro. I drive a scooter because there's so much traffic here in Bali. You can't drive a car. I bought my mom a car. I don't even own a car, but I feel good about that. And I don't need it where I am right now. If I was living in somewhere with open roads and, I would be happy to. And yeah, like own a Porsche. And then that, for me, that is something internal. I would like to drive a Porsche. When I was a kid, I got like this red toy Porsche my grandma brought back to me from London, and I was like, wow, this is something I want to drive one day, and I still have that feeling. But am I like, oh, I need it now? Or, it's like, yeah, one day when it comes, I'll be happy and it'll be right place, right time. And not in a passive sense, like I already know I'll get it. So it's not like wanting and wishing, and at the same time it's not like, oh, I need that to define who I am. No, these things serve greater purposes that we may not even see, right? I know we're on the topic of materialism, so let me get to that. Like, let's say for Rolex, for example. I came across this concept from, I think it's an economist, and he was saying like Rolex, maybe 100K, 200K, 500K, right? And wealthy men buy this. And why? Why do they buy this? Is it just to look good and stuff? Maybe, but it serves a second purpose. Let's say something happens and they get their bank account frozen, or they need to leave their country, or something like that happens. Like, they can literally go anywhere in the world to another country, sell their Rolex, and start a new life, buy an apartment, have money for a year or two. Like, so just having that one on your wrist is more than just showing, right? So that's one instance of something that you may think, or we may think, is just, materialism, but it can have utility in it as well. The other thing, Ferraris. I was in Poland recently, and I got invited to a meetup. I couldn't go because, parental obligations. But uh, my friend there was telling me like, yeah, you can go to the meetup and everything. But the whole point of the meetup there, of getting people who own Ferraris together, is not about the Ferraris and just, oh, I have a Ferrari. It's like, this is the men at a certain echelon together. So we know how money works when you're in business and stuff. When you're an entrepreneur, it flows in the networks, so there is where they go, they connect, they make those connections, business deals happen there for millions, and who knows how much money, so you get access to that network with this tier of spending and money flowing. So it's more than just, oh, I have a Ferrari. It's like this network that you get access to as well, right? So then there's the other side of it, that I think, a lot of people may miss, because you may be thinking, oh, it's just for display and show. But if you go deeper into a lot of things, you'll see this as well. Like different things people own or invest in or consume may have added benefits behind it. So it's more than just me spending, a couple hundred grand to get a whatever, sports car or whatever. Um, but behind the scenes, it's like, oh, this may get me access to a network where I can close millions in deals, so then it becomes somewhat of an investment. So there's two sides to it, right?
Absolutely. And I believe in the same nuance. See, the thing is, a lot of the people would spend their money and spend it in a way that they have zero left just to show that they're rich, right? And then there are some people who do that to get bigger contracts. And we know several people who drive bigger cars just to make sure that they can even get bigger deals, because essentially, to hang out with a certain cater of people, you need to have that showy stuff. You need to be, like, you need to show that you own shit and you can own shit, and I think this is something that I do believe in as well. Like, if tomorrow I know that, okay, if I invest in a Ferrari and I spend $500,000 on that, and if I just own that, and like, meet clients who are at that cater, I will close multi-million-dollar deals, because money is essentially an energy, and the way we look at it, versus the way somebody who is a billionaire looks at it, it's almost the same, right? But the way they consume it, they spend it, is almost the same as well. So for me, as long as you can comfortably afford things, versus putting everything in jeopardy and going out of comfort, and spending on things which you don't really actually own, and taking loans to own that shit just to show people that you're fucking rich, I think that nuance is a bit fucked up, right? The nuance that makes sense is, yeah, if you are using that to get somewhere, great. And all of these people who own these fancy watches, that literally is increasing in value day in, day out. These fancy watches, fancy cars, fancy bags, all of these things are increasing in value day in, day out. So they're just not investing on that just to show it off, but they have a value to it. And that's why when I bought the house, that was a different story, right? Because when I bought the house, I wanted to make sure that I have a place where I feel comfortable in and I have a base there, right? But I also have that in my mind that, 5 years down the lane or 10 years down the lane, the value of the house versus the money, that is just, keep sitting in the bank account, would always get down and down and down further because of inflation. But when it comes to the house, the value at least it stays the same. So for me, like, I also don't do day trading, like where I'm investing and then divesting, etc., etc. I just put the money in because I know the value of the share will keep increasing, in 5 years. So why do I even have to worry about those things? So I think as long as we are living in a world where we are wise about how we spend, and what value do we see in future of the spending that we are making wisely versus showing it off, I think that makes the difference when it comes to materialism. Yeah,
Rafi,
these
can
are.
I build on that one? Because a point that comes into my mind is the relationship between material stuff and your own perception of yourself or your confidence.
Yeah,
Because I don't know where I heard it before, but brands, when you are owning a Rolex, it's actually you are borrowing the brand's attributes to yourself. So it's a borrow. When you're driving a Ferrari, you're also borrowing the brand of Ferrari, so you can be associated with those brand attributes. And I think on the other side, but the interesting part of it, like, because sometimes it's also a narrative that you tell yourself. If you were, let's say, for example, your Rolex, you have what type of car, let's say a supercar, and so on. The thing is, and I think this is where it comes in, you start to perceive yourself in a certain way that is reflected in your interaction. So materialism can actually be very interesting in the build up of sometimes in the beginning, because we were speaking about confidence at some point of time, and that confidence is not that something that everyone owns, but you can borrow it. But this is the dangerous part because it's got two sides of the coin. You can borrow it, but remember, it's a borrow, it would never be you. So do not
absolutely.
confuse the material possessions of now I'm owning this. But listen, if you lose all of this tomorrow, who are you? And I want to focus on that person, and the lowest that you will fall. Remember, this is where you will be if you lose everything. And the thing that really gives you real life confidence is how low your bar will be. And always remember, I think it's very okay to have the material possessions to boost it, but never forget the person that's hiding behind all of this. That you also need to lift that person in case you lose the material possessions at some point of time. Then you have something that you can lean back on, which is you as a person. And
Yeah.
I think this is how it could be a good interplay. Like you use it to boost yourself, but never forget the real self in here.
And also,
Mm.
like, Ali, one thing that I wanted to add on is, I think a lot of the people who want to own fancier stuff also own it in a way to show that they know, they have a good taste. Because see, like, if I'm owning a limited edition Rolex, the people who can afford it would actually know that it's a limited edition Rolex. Not everybody would know that it's a fancy watch. Otherwise, like, people usually, get these fancier things because they want to belong as well. Like, the society that they live in, all of those guys, own, nicer things, and they want to be possibly, just be able to relate and belong. And I think that is one of the things that might not be materialistic, just a sense of belonging. Because for people who are making millions, for them to spend a few $100,000 on a watch, it's like nothing, right?
Yeah.
So for them it might not be materialism as well.
So I want to add to this, right? Like, let's go to the core principles now. So human beings were visual creatures and were hierarchical as well. From the time we were, if you believe in that, like primates or whatever, like, there's always dominance hierarchy. Jordan Peterson's lobster theory, or it's proven. I don't know. So basically, everything visual can already put us in certain hierarchy, right? For example, let's say we have two allies walk into the same room. One is dressed in a t-shirt, and the other one is wearing a suit, a Rolex, and really fancy glasses. Let's say frame. Like immediately, you're gonna judge both of them and know which one is successful, right? Like they would look successful there, so you assume already, and that is without even exchanging a word, knowing anything about him, anything like that, right? And that's a visual cue, and most of materialism is about that. So the analogy of if the world was blind, would you do what you want or do what you do, like is a good one, because probably we wouldn't give a shit about anything if the world was blind, like probably run around naked, but that's the thing, right? A lot of it is tied to the visual side of things, and how we are perceived, and who doesn't want to be respected, who doesn't want to be liked, every single one of us. And we're always in this state of status signaling, with everything we own, everything we do, even anything that someone outside ourselves will see and interpret. And even if I say, like, I don't want to own anything, and I'm just gonna wear black t-shirts every day, and that's me, I'm minimalist, that is status signaling, because I have to, you know, fall into a bracket of a type of person. He's the type of person who only wears this one shirt because he's comfortable with that, and that is status signaling by itself. Already, we want to be perceived as this type of person, right? If you didn't care, you probably won't care, and don't give a shit about having black t-shirt. You just have whatever you own or somebody gives you, and that would be it. But you still put effort into that to be perceived as this type of person that may be competent or embodying traits of billionaires, like Zuckerberg or whoever used to do this. But that is very, very important, right? So tying it to the concept of, like, we are judged by this. So every single one of us who gives a shit about ourselves would go for these things, would go into materialism, and to an extent. But it's the overconsumption, as we mentioned. I think that's where it becomes problematic. So getting consumed by the consumption, as Ali said.
Yeah.
So Neil, to sorry, Rafi, did you have a point?
No, no, go on, Lee.
It's I think what's very interesting in here is chasing materialism actually can also have a very positive side of it. Because sometimes, and I think all three of us can agree, sometimes you really wanted something for the longest time, and as soon as you achieve it, I'm like, that's it. And I think it's in our humanness that we are keep chasing for the better and the better. And I think at the end of it, it's perfection. And again, as a Muslim, I believe the ultimate perfection is in God. And I think the materialism is just a way to show us whatever you're owning, there will be another thing that will be missing in your life. Because we see people who are, like the number of suicidal between people who are very rich. I'm not saying richness is bad, but I'm saying, like, there are a lot of them that actually is owning everything we could ever dream of, but they still didn't find happiness. And that's a total different topic to understand that, okay, there are a path, and sometimes try to chase it, try to achieve it. And even I'm saying, try to do it in a younger age. I think that if I had to go back again, honestly, I would have made other decisions to build a strong financial stability already in my 20s, because you had so fucking much time and energy. I'm like, fuck around and find out. Instead of fucking around and finding out about life, I would have built my financial part in what type and way. And then I would have afterwards, with the money I've had and the stability I built, maybe at the age of 25 and so on, start to explore and start to build, because my exploration will also have been totally different. It's just the hierarchy of things. Explore, and then you figure out life is fucking tough without money, and then you start to build money. Opposite, I would say, build your financial stability, and then you can explore life, because you will explore a total different life. So, and that's really my point on materialism and how much you are owning. You will always be missing something, and honestly, that's a good thing. I think it's in our spirituality. And like, now you have everything. Why do you feel that there are something missing? And for me, I think it's the spiritual part of it, or the God inside us, that is calling. You are part materialism, but you also part spirit. And these two need to somehow be in balance. You cannot neglect the materialism and call yourself a monk, and you cannot neglect the spirituality and call yourself a materialist. And I think that coexistence is very important and is becoming very hard because life requires that we have material possessions and we keep running for the material part. My only concern for myself and for people I have around me is that you only realize that imbalance very late on in your life. And then you want to do the switch. So I'm hoping that I remember or keep remembering the importance of that balance so I don't get lost in one of them. And we just had a conversation like before starting this podcast with Neil of saying the most precious and beautiful moments are, for example, when I'm sitting with my little Gabby, my son, and he's just saying, Dad, I love you. I'm like, you know what? No material possessions, even driving whatever 100 Ferraris and crashing them and having 100 Ferraris would never give me that feeling. It just, I can't explain it. It's magical. And understanding that these things, at the end of it, honestly, if I'm thinking back on my life, I think the thing that will pop in my mind is not, I think maybe driving a Ferrari one time would be a very beautiful experience, but nothing to compare to the things that you have around you. And sometimes we need to just open our eyes and remember the magic and the beautiful things that we have around us. Which lead me to another point that I think was Coco Chanel or something like that that said the best things in life are for free, the next best are very expensive. And then I think honestly we just need sometimes to see what do we have around us that is giving us, because at the end of it, materialism or no materialism, it is just a sense of fulfillment. I know reality now is built about material possessions, but I think we will some when you really own a lot of things, you will realize maybe that was just an illusion.
Yeah.
And so it's I don't know the end of it, like how to balance these things, but I also don't want to wake up 60 and figure out all of the things I've been building has been just an illusion and I wasted my time on building towards that illusion.
Yeah. And I think big part of living a life is being grateful for what you have. I think that's what creates the balance, because I think even if we just think 3 years ago, the things that we wanted, we have, and we will always be wanting more. No matter what we have tomorrow, we will always be wanting more. But being grateful for what you have, where you are today, I think that is just a game changer. And that's why, having a gratitude exercise every single day and just, focusing on what you have accomplished really fulfills you. But that does not mean that you stop wanting more. And if you want more, work hard for it. And I think that is what hard work is made of. Like, you have to work hard, you have to crack some shit and make sure that you succeed in life, because everything is possible. And there are a lot of the people who have made it in their lives, in one way or form. But as you said, that not everybody gets happy even when, they have all the material possessions, because they are like, okay, what is the meaning of life? Because they stopped being grateful, stop being grateful with what they have. And I'm not speaking on their behalf, but I think gratitude, being thankful for what you could, accomplish where you are today, no matter what hardships you have in life, I think that is just a big game changer. And that's why when it comes to materialism, instead of running after expensive things, run after hard work, because I think that will make everything possible for you. And I think for us as well, like, all three of us are working really, really hard just to make sure, we can get to the vision that we have. And we have a vision, and we know that, we want to get there ASAP.
Mm. That's a solid point. Raphael, I want to close on your point because everyone says hard work, but what is it really? And I think a good analogy to let it sink in is simple one. Like, if you go to the grocery and you want to get pasta, you pay, $1 and you get a pack of pasta. You come home, you boil it, mix up your tomato sauce, whatever in it, and you eat your pasta and that's it. However, if you go to the grocery, you buy flour, you buy salt, you buy whatever other ingredients, you go home, you make the dough, you spend time with your family, then you cut it up, then you boil it, and you check the temperature to make sure it's boiled to this one, and you follow a recipe. When you eat that pasta, that is going to be the best motherfucking pasta you eat because you put in the work, right? And that is not hard work. That is, it might be hard work, but depends. But just the fact that you put in effort and get that outcome, like, you appreciate it so much. So it's the same for life, so if you work your ass off and you want the finer things, you want to wear your design, all of this, as long as you don't tie yourself to that, like that image that you want to create, like, if you're dependent on that, then there's no stability under you. So I think once the base is taken care of, once you're solid in yourself and who you are as a person, then whatever you put on the outside of it is up to you, but no dependency.
Yeah. Earn it, fucking earn it.
Exactly.
Don't burn it. Keep
Exactly.
fucking earning and make sure that you get there. And I think, hard work to me is just keep doing, being persistent, and you will see the results. You if you stop and you're like, okay, that's it, I've done it. Completely up to you. But if you want finer things, you have to keep going. With that being said, I think we are coming to the end of this podcast. I hope you liked it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave the comment below. If you want us to talk about a specific topic, do also let us know. And I'm hoping that you guys are enjoying these conversations. And if you're not, listen to it again. With that being said, I think we can end the podcast. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.